with all these new terms which basically confuse everybody, and really, we
Lindsay,
keep getting words thrown at us and then making us argue about what they really mean.
probably an actor.
Hmm. Do you think he's complicating things a lot by the way he talks?
Well, he's being imprecise, or I've heard that be a critique, especially in his use of Gnosticism, of the term of Gnosticism, and conflating that with liberalism. I've heard people say that that is rather imprecise. So without giving a long historical critique of how those two paths sort of merged, I think, but then you have Jordan Peterson, who kind of does the same thing using Jung, who's clearly using Gnostic, ideas, so they're both supplanting sort of this idea of Gnosticism, or this pseudo spiritual idea, wherever it's convenient, and
Yeah,
in
I
that
think
they're
we're
poisoning the
deliberately
well
confusing
because they're,
us.
yeah, definitely.
And this makes it even more obvious that, we do need an official moral system, which is basically a religion. I mean, I've been promoting Sharia as a non-Muslim for a while now, but, this is something, but you see these systems already have, ways of talking about specific terms that, are at least known to scholars, but all this sort of woke right and woke left and Gnosticism, and nobody knows what the hell they mean, really. And I think that they're using it to confuse us and, kind of paralyze us into inaction, and even and make us unable to even use words that mean anything. And they're basically forcing us to use the language of the Tower of Babel, which makes it difficult for us to understand each other, when really what we need to do is organize and say, this is wrong, that is wrong, this is a solution and that is a solution, and speak in terms that are easily understood to the man in the street who hasn't got time for to talk about these things at length.
Yeah, and I think they're deliberately poisoning the well. Like, for example, Jordan Peterson, right? When he was complaining about free speech issues, instead of saying that they should reinforce social taboos, but in the other direction, right? He basically said he basically critiqued them for upholding social taboos, but in the form of liberalism. So he wanted the free speech, right? He wanted the right to critique social taboos, right? But he's framing it wrong, because what he should actually plead for is to enforce social taboos in the opposite direction, right? And say, well, we should be able to shame, people who don't fall in line with our, moral systems, and the normie should be able to shame the people who fall outside of the line of those systems, but he didn't quite say that. See, this
Well,
is
we
the
don't know
problem.
who's normal anymore, do we?
Right.
I mean, do we? I mean, even people who talk about normies, it's like, who is really normal? And I think that the problem is that we don't even know what our, official moral system is. Is it really something called woke? It seems undignified. I mean, Jews have Judaism, Christians have Christianity, and what we have woke. It's not even grammatical.
Well, that is the thing, is that woke is a pseudo rebellion against leftism.
I thought it was leftism. I thought it was kind of black
Right,
right
but
or something.
none of the leftists actually claim that they're woke. I mean, so it's kind of like saying that somebody's a relativist. Like, nobody actually claims to be a relativist, so it goes to that level.
Yeah, I mean, liberalism brought in the idea of moral relativism, but it's saying, yeah, we'll just agree to disagree, and not kill each other over our beliefs. But then it's like, well, surely even then we need to acknowledge what is the dominant belief system. And of course, it's liberalism. But then liberalism is, I mean, is it still, what are its principles? I mean, there's no book about the rules and principles of liberalism. So I guess it's always, somebody in charge saying that this or that is liberalism. Um, while, we still don't know. Even now, we don't know. And that's why they keep, changing the terms of debate and confusing us and, you know, making us argue with each other when we should be saying enough of this. We want a proper system with rules so we know when our ruling classes are breaking the rules.
Yeah, that's why I think that long discussions are necessary to flesh out exactly more precise terminology of what is liberalism, because it is uniquely Western and Judeo-Christian and European. But on the other level, it's tied to classical liberalism and also modernity, right? So somehow there has to be precise terminology to flesh out exactly what liberalism is, right? So that people can actually oppose it, right? But if you try to pretend like the people on the peripheries of liberalism, like the woke people, are liberals, and you're just attacking the symptoms and not the disease, so called.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about codification is basically, liberals should have, like Judaism has 10 commandments, or Islam has 5 pillars. We sort of know what they are, but with liberalism, it's like, well, what are the principles of liberalism? And nobody will agree because there's no official codification, and that's why it keeps changing and confusing us. Because really, conservatism is also, well, it's just the opposite side of the coin. Um, of liberalism. Conservatism has always been the junior partner, and where did liberalism comes from? I guess it came from the French Revolution, when the French revolutionaries were saying, calling out for liberty, equality, and fraternity. And it's like, that's it? Is that it? Is it possible just to say, we want liberty, but then, some people might say, my right to swing my arms stops where your nose begins. So, it's not clear how free we are. Um, and I think at the end of the day, it is, liberty is only what we ought to enjoy after all the necessary laws are in place. And obviously libertarians can never agree. They only go on about the harm principle, but who knows what is really harmful until it's too late. And libertarians can never agree with each other, about the minimum number of rules that they can live by. So that's no help. So I think in the end, we're forced to go back to religion, right? It's like, well, if we don't know what's good for us, and our ruling classes don't know what's good for us, apparently God knows what's good for us. So we'll have to have a look at that, however reluctantly.
Well, I think that goes
Because
to
at
one of the
least there's a
yeah.
a list of rules that, under Sharia. It's like, well, it's written down. Some people still use it. We know what it is. Maybe we want to interpret it in a different way, but it's sort of there. We don't have to make it up.
Right, right. But I think that goes to the core principle, because if you look at and examine, where they say liberalism came from, they say it came from a conflict between science and religion, right? So I mean, ultimately, it has to be certain principles that were developed. Like, for example, man's mastery of nature through reason, right? Individualism, right? And the belief in, um, freedom and equality, and these sorts of things. So you could routinely see that these ideas, comprise most, secular ideologies, right? And they were born in Europe, right? So you could actually, you know, you, you could give a face and name to this thing, And then you can also add in this fact that, liberalism is sort of imprecise because the thing that actually, proliferates liberal ideology is technology, right? So you have to mention the objective factor of power because liberalism could not proliferate until the Industrial Revolution. It just simply could not. From the 1600s to the 1800s, you had no proliferation of liberal values and principles within society. It was the technology that made the liberal principles endemic within society. So these people are being very imprecise about what they're talking about. They're constantly aiming at some sort of specter. I mean,
Well, I think this desire for liberty is a kind of reaction against the totalitarian nature of the European wars of religion, which is basically Protestants and um, Catholics fighting it out amongst themselves. And then, after the wars were over, I guess Europeans were saying to each other, what was that all about? Have we, gained anything much? And then there was the Enlightenment when people, having grown tired of killing each other for religious reasons, asked themselves these questions, and then that was interrupted by, well, the American Revolution and then the French Revolution, and you know, well, I mean, the American Revolution has a stated aim of allowing Americans to live free of a king, with the right to pursue um, happiness and liberty, right? I mean that's how it's put in the U.S. Declaration of Independence: the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. Have I got it right? Um,
yeah,
so the idea that people want to be free of government and interference, but that now we've gone too far the other way, and in a way it's kind of logical that sexual freedom comes into it because it's like, well, we should have the right to have sex with people not our spouse. And then we get to really murky areas about incest and bestiality and sodomy, and then bad things happen to our demographics if not enough people are becoming married parents and properly rearing their offspring. And then there's labor problems and immigration, and everybody's angry and confused, and now we don't even know what we're talking about. So I mean that's how I see the situation at the moment. And we,
yeah.
we just need simple words that can be explained to ordinary people.
I think two things are extremely necessary. The belief in human reason, that goes and pairs with this idea of idealism and the notion of progress, right? I think these two things are extremely necessary, right, for the development of liberalism. And you could basically summarize it in this way because, um, like Thomas Jefferson, right? He both owned slaves and had a belief that universally slavery would become a thing of the past. So he both practiced one thing and believed in an idea of progress that suggests the elimination of that thing throughout time. So he was able to separate his ideology from his actions. And I think this is a huge achievement within Christian moral systems, right? Is that they're able to separate faith and reason, as Aquinas says, right? And this is a huge, and this sort of abstraction, caused this sort of abstraction and dualism caused the birth of this form of that you can hold a belief, you can entertain a belief that you don't readily follow and believe that it will become endemic on a universal scale, which is basically progress, and be right about it. This is the most bizarre thing about it, is that Thomas Jefferson was right, except for he didn't understand. Maybe he'll wake up today and say that the form of um you know um power that we're under is a worse form of slavery. Who knows? I mean,
Mm.
but
But
still, he
maybe
believed in progress that much.
But maybe slavery cannot be done away with because it keeps popping back up and calling itself different names. But it is really a form of slavery. I mean, I've been thinking about this. Is that actually we're really the slaves of our government? Um, it might be polite about it and call us citizens and pretend we have rights that they just remove whenever they feel like it. And having studying a bit of Roman history and during the time when proscription was practiced, I mean, basically, even the rich people didn't escape from the Roman state when, the Roman Empire sent its soldiers out to acquire empire, but promised its soldiers a bit of land, and when they came back, they had to satisfy this expectation that these soldiers would be these veterans would be pensioned off with a piece of land, and they basically um, killed a lot of rich people and took their land to pay their soldiers. So I think a lot of people think that the rich get away with it, but possibly they don't, because then everybody knows where they live, how much they own, and where to come when to take their stuff, and we just don't want to live through these terrible times, and that's why I think it's important to make sure that we don't live in a failed state where chaos reigns. And I think maybe the rich people think they're going to get away with it, but ultimately there will wealth will be nothing if there is no civil society for them to go to the bank and buy stuff and protect themselves from people who want to harm them. And therefore, if we are really the slaves of our government, ultimately, because the government has control over the police and the army, we can, well, I'm just arguing that if obeying the laws of God gives us a better deal than obeying the laws of our government, we should seize it with both hands.
Yeah, and I think that the time is basically coming in terms of science and technology created a sort of you know a pseudo religion, including the pseudo eschatology of progress, right? And that idea is collapsing, right? But the whole question is how it's going to be used. I mean, so in terms of Lindsay, one of the ideas he pointed out is this idea of controlled degrowth, and all of those ideas. So I think that there's certain new agendas around the corner, but people have to pay more close attention to it. I do think that this talk is part of that agenda, but I guess I'll have to investigate more. Have you seen this before, Claire? I have not
No,
seen this yet.
no.
Yeah,
What the talk between Jordan Peterson? What is the name of the other guy?
James Lindsay.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So his contention is that there's a woke right. So they're basically conservative in name only, and he's sort of hijacking Christianity. The way he's sort of hijacking Christian iconography in terms of styling Gnosticism as liberalism, where he's kind of taking this from the prominent thinker Eric Voegelin, right? He had a lot of ideas about this, right? So Voegelin, obviously, he wrote letters to Leo Strauss. You guys can look that up because Leo Strauss is actually one of the main figures at the heart of paleoconservatism,
Mm-hmm.
and that was blamed. The whole ideology from Pat Buchanan, the paleoconservative ideology, was blamed by the Atlantic. I looked up as being the godfather of the woke right. So there was some of the investigation I did about it here today.
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, they sort of, I really think, okay, I really think we confuse ourselves by saying, this is right and this is left, because, decades ago, well, last century, in fact, Hitler arrived on this idea. It's like there's this thing called communism, and there's this thing called nationalism. Why don't we just merge them and say we've got the best of both worlds? And he did it, a century ago, and this synthesis has been happening since, I guess, Hegel was talking about his the Hegelian dialectic, that you have thesis, antithesis, and then synthesis, and it keeps changing, and the words in a way become meaningless unless we can root what we're talking in like, well, this is a book of conservatism, this is the official book of liberalism, this is the official book of communism or whatever. It's just that currently, as liberalism, there is no holy Bible of liberalism. And this means that intellectuals identifying with the government will keep saying that liberalism is, what I say it is now, and they add all kinds of contradictory rubbish to it that, in the end, it doesn't resemble what is even meant to be at all. And we all get confused, and that is why I keep saying we need, an official moral system that has a book, and I'm saying, well, there's the Quran. Nobody's going to mess around with its words or redact its verses. They wouldn't dare. And if you have access to this book, then at least you know what the rules are supposed to be. And I mean, I'm just saying it's a mechanical thing. Like, oh, okay, you're playing a game. You need to know the name of the game, you need the objectives of the game, and you need to be able to read the rules of the game. But if you keep asking the person you're playing with what the rules are, and they say you can't read it because it's an unwritten constitution, which is what the British are always being told. Like, oh, you have this wonderful unwritten constitution. Well, actually, it means that they don't have a constitution at all, which is why so many, British people get thrown into prison for Facebook posts.
Yeah. Yeah, but part and parcel of this entire thing is I don't know if you've ever heard, is this whole idea of accelerationism, right? Which the obviously more prominent actors like Elon Musk are pushing that sort of game, but on the intellectual sort of level, they have these guys like Dugan, and also Nick Land, right, who are talking about international trade, and technology and all these ideas and pseudo governmental systems being the death of liberalism and being the death of capitalism. The main thing in the critique of Deleuze and Guattari is the relationship between technology and capitalism, right? And they believe that these are in a sort of inverse relationship with each other, right? I'm in a sort of negative feedback loop, right? And that is part and parcel of their critique. So they are some of them are partly in a game of crypto communism, trying to collapse the idea of capitalism through the notion of technology. To quote Ellul, who said that that liberalism is on its deathbed and technology is its executioner, right? So these are some of the framing of some of the other ideas there, right?
On the question of capitalism, I mean, it's usury, isn't it? Capitalism cannot operate without fractional reserve banking, and this means usury. And I would have thought Sharia would end all that, but obviously there's a lot of vested interest in usury. But there are certain advantages too, because if you say, if usury were banned tomorrow, then house prices would become affordable again to most people, and people would be able to default on their debts, contracted under usurious terms. So we need to kind of be clear that capitalism also means usury, and when you want to abolish usury, you don't necessarily abolish commerce, because commerce is supported by the Quran, but usury is, obviously forbidden. But
Right.
usury, it's sort of like, let's go and shake the money tree every time we're feeling poor, and it's become a behavioural addiction. And but then our governments have borrowed so much that in trillions, I don't know how much, and that's why taxes are so high, because it's just the next generation are expected to service the debt, and they keep doing it. um and yeah, I mean that is what they keep doing. Taxes keep increasing. The tax ceiling keeps being raised, and it's got to come to an end, one day, because there was a time. I mean, okay, maybe it's a bit complicated to explain, but I mean, it obviously has distorted the economy and does cause a boom bust cycle.
Yeah. Yeah, and the Salafis and the Saudis, they are obviously crooks. They don't believe in Islam, right? But otherwise, yeah. I mean, yeah, the fact is that they are not allowed to use usury and interest, right? It's forbidden by the Quran. But yeah, those are facts that you're stating. Um, um, yeah, thank you, Claire. Blessings.
Oh, good. I'm glad I've been useful. Thank you.
Oh yeah, of course. Of course, excellent feedback, and of course, we'll watch some of this. Yeah, but please let me know if you want me to pause it. Blessings.
Okay.
Very long essay explaining that this is what I see as at the root, because I was trying to diagnose and explain to people what nobody was calling woke yet at the time, at the end of 2020, or maybe we had just begun to call woke. We were trying to diagnose and explain this social justice left phenomenon. And so I put out this essay and said, I think at the root, underneath the whole thing, there's the same psychopathologies that motivated people like Lenin and Stalin and all this. And I didn't have the psychological chops. I was aware of dark triad or tetrad terminology. I did know quite a bit about the cluster B personality disorders because I knew some people who were basically rabid feminists in the 2010s, and they were all talking about how they had various schizoidal personality, and that one may be cluster A. I'm not totally sure. Yeah, and then they had the borderline, antisocial, histrionic, narcissistic would come up again and again. And I think that actually tell me, is paranoid's cluster C, right? Yeah. My reading, for example, of Derek Bell, one of the founders of critical race theory, is that he had very likely suffered.
And this seems like, the study on the authoritarian personality, that was written by Theodore Adorno, that we've all got a little Hitler living inside of us. So, we better watch out. This is a cornerstone of leftist studies and critical theory and all that type of stuff, right? So the fact that he's putting that back in the face of the conservatives, that's highly strange, right? Because, he's essentially saying that, that Lenin is like, why pathologize Lenin, right? Why not just look at where he was successful, right? He took over a whole country. Right? I mean, it's worth taking a look at the mechanics of how he achieved that, right? And not agreeing with his ideology, right? So, I mean, there's obvious use for that, but he's sort of poisoning the well by saying, well, Lenin was this crazy person who's like a narcissist who gained power. And that's sort of a rereading of history that I don't think is, really necessary. But yeah. And again, I think this, I deeply frown upon this psychopathologizing of ideological, views. I mean, there's no need to get into this, right? And this is exactly what the leftists do, right? They say, well, you're a narcissist, you're a, you're a baby Hitler or whatever, so I don't know.
For both paranoia and schizoidea, which are both mentioned by by Lobachevsky as well as indicative. I can't say any about any of the cluster Bs. So that I think it's a little broader than just that one cluster appear. Conspiracy theories or paranoid thinking, for example.
Yeah, right.
And schizoids tend to have imaginary conversations with people who aren't there on a childish fictional level.
I mean, we all know what it is. The left wing are autists and the right wing are schizoids. So what? But that's all that's left of these people. They've become totally, disheveled in their thinking because of modernism. So yeah, what do we get if we pathologize everybody? You know what I mean? What do what do we win? I mean,
they're pretending the world is the way that it should have been for their emotions when they were 9 years old. That's the split, the skits in the schizoidal. And so they write these elaborate stories about how the world's supposed to be, and then they have outbursts when the world doesn't match that. And Derek Bell was famous for writing these missives where he would present them as evidence of racism at Harvard, where he had an imaginary conversation with a dean and then would write the whole.
Yeah, that part is true. The cognitive dissonance in the right wing and the left wing is very true. Right? That their idealism and they're pushing for progress with, sort of the same methodology gives them a sort of very weak footing.
Whole imaginary conversation down, and I'm thinking this is so disordered, not just disordered thinking, but this is psychologically disordered, that you would then present this hypothetical conversation as evidence. But at any rate,
so let me
for a long time I've thought that's there.
Okay, so let's lay down some theses.
Yeah. I mean,
tell me.
Yeah, I mean, you're a critical psychologist. Like, you don't have any reflection on what he just said. It's highly strange. I mean,
what you think of them. So the first is that about 4 to 5% of the population, maybe more, has dark tetrad cluster B.
Are you familiar with this dark tetrad cluster situation? Madam, I don't know if you're familiar with this situation.
No, I need to be reminded. I mean, what is narcissism and
This is
psychopathy and whatnot? But I need to be reminded.
Dark tetrad. I just looked this up because I was not familiar with it myself, but it seems pretty self-explanatory once you look at the image here that they provide. And this is the image here. Let me show you. Because they keep referring back to this dark tetrad thing. And so this is essentially what it is. And so there's, yeah. So as I was saying, oh, whoops. Maybe she accidentally fell out. But yeah, we'll see if she comes back. If not, this is what they're referring to, this dark tetrad, right? So if you'll see, right, there's two parts. Whoa. Maybe the StreamYard's kicking everybody out, right? That happens sometimes too, right? Everybody gets kicked out. If I try to share screen, it'll kick the other people out. See how this works? It's trippy, man. Okay, well, we'll just wait for everybody to come back in. I mean, or I'll drop the link here, right? And see if anybody comes back in, and then I'll continue my presentation after we play some music here, right? Take a little music break. Thank you guys for joining. And continue here.
This had to happen. I thought of this, possessed by a demon while a preacher was screaming at me in Latin. I guess he thought that he could fight it, but that was kinda naive, cause why would it wanna leave if it was invited? I took off this halo, I had a message for God. I thought it worked as a two-way radio. He was small potatoes, but I needed a person to sacrifice, like when you throw a virgin in a volcano. I started recognizing his God cut off communication. I guess his location wasn't worth jeopardizing. He started petrifying. His body was dead stiff, as if he forgot to stretch before exercising. I had been had, his Bible was a tad bit light. He had cut out the pages to put a flask in it. I wasn't mad at it, I probably would have done it myself. Or maybe I'm just playing devil's advocate. Playing devil's advocate.
I've seen this. This is the end. Laying right there, like that. I stand here, right here. I'm supposed to say something.
Last chip in the bag, last page of the novel. I'm gluing the last stick of a ship I made in a glass bottle. When I began, I didn't think it was possible, but I think therefore I am, like Aristotle. I study meditation. I had to be in the zone in order to go beyond my own expectation. A lot of hard work and dedication, it never deterred me. It's more about the journey than the destination. What would be the reason for me to take on such a feat if I couldn't guarantee I would see its completion? I'm obviously berserk, cause I believe when I'm deceased I probably could live through my body of work. I'm stranded inside of this mannequin, but the plan is understand how to reanimate as a mannequin. All's well that ends well. See you in hell. I'll pull my cape over my face before vanishing.
And you will face catastrophe. My crown shine precise with the princess cut masterpiece through the bullseye. I'm like Crow with the crossbow. I symbolize death like a skull and crossbones. Non-believers get hit with assault heaters. Motion dicks are lame like saltpeter. I'ma shake your mind every time I'm taking mine. Devil snake spine, divine rhymes of Frankenstein. I'm talking out loud. They saw the prophet and bowed. Angel wings on my feet, feels like I'm walking on clouds. You ain't shit, you're a pump. Pop the clip in the pump. You're closer to death by a hop, skip, and a jump. Territorial sites divide like stereotypes. In due time I fulfill religious burial rites. I'm sly like a fox, with eyes like a hawk's. Spent some time in the box, and I blow up like an ox. You're not safe from hell, you're getting raped in your cell. I jumped the screw for his keys, and then escaped from the jail. My fam's heaven come together like the Trinity, divinity, entity, ready to kill a Kennedy. Your shit gets blown. I have you get some stitches, I'll break you like a wishbone and make you kiss the stone. I'm a beast waiting. In my dreams I see Satan telling me to get a gun and shoot up the police station. I'm from the underworld. My slaves obtained 100 pearls, blunts to twirl. Every night I fuck another girl. I'm on a far star, playing bombs with cops are. I target squad cars, Allahu Akbar. I break you apart. I've been a snake from the start. The only way to kill me is a stake through the heart. My razor shaves next, basement reeks of decayed flesh. Who do I slay next? I read Bible and play chess.
There is a shovel that is important in the countryside. I'm a beast like Intro 9 with Cain's minus side. It sounds like time is marked, there are vineyards and grapevines. This found inside the eye where some man is crushed and dies. My thought is sharp, it pins you to the wall behind. The wooden floor collapsed 3 times, the bodies are hidden beneath the sky. Yet I am a man who has become angry with the decisions of the king. So one night I started a crime ring. We hid barrels of gunpowder under the floor where the king was to give a speech, and blew his ass to smithereens, and blew his ass to smithereens. My poetry has a crow that pricks blood of his paranoia. This ship built in such a way that it would collapse mid-voyage. At night late down by the lake, overpass behind the creek, with a lit candlelight creep. Perhaps you'll find I've constructed Panels in the ceiling to collapse and kill you while you sleep. It is lost behind the wall, what has never been found to all. In time of the great fire, you watch the chandelier fall. A door is cracked, though in fact what you find behind it exact is a place where memory is trapped, or those killed by my axe. There is a war that rages in heaven, fists, zodiacs, many eyes and wings that are feathered. You're betrayed by creatures who seek their own death forever.
Yo, look me in the eye, your life's a total lie. I'm like the Godfather, I take your kids when you die. I visit small towns, spreading my sickness that's afflicted. Now I live in hospitals, painting pictures of my victims. It became a fairy tale, so the story keeps on living. On how I brought them death, the gift that keeps on giving. I stalk them all, horror calls when the darkness falls. I chop your balls, you hear the growls of the monster bros in the mental institution. On all kinds of medication, now I pray on their souls through constant meditation. Fuck a haircut, you need your head chopped off. Catch you in the crossfire when the lead pop off. My parables are terrible, I walk where pharaohs go, through the halls of miracles, the fallen walls of Jericho. Next to me is ecstasy, the Holy Ghost reflects in me, a living legacy through ESP. I see destiny, I hoard the steel that'll make them mourn for real. I sworn to steal, I was born in jail. Prophet Muhammad came to me in a dream with the lights out and instructed me to suicide bomb the White House. For he's the final prophet and Jesus is the Messiah. We're no longer awaiting the return of Elijah. Through land and sea wouldn't find a man more noble. I react nuclear, melt to the core like Chernobyl. Inserted in the gun, you want a hamburger bun. I murder for fun and burn your corpse when I'm done. I bled red gravy. When I was young, the lead grazed me. I'm head crazy. I break bread with dead babies. You're disgraceful, wasteful, ungrateful, unthankful. A skeleton reach out the ground and grabs your ankle. In a haunted swamp, when I'm around, you hear the monster stomp a dead body. Could still let out a rotten fart. I see the bitch in you. I'm wishing you the chicken flu. Only if you knew what was brewing in my witch's brew. Throw stones at holes made of glass alone. Recite poems that move bones in sacred domes in Rome. There's no defense known against this killer's assault. No looking back or you get turned into a pillar of salt. If I'm not left alone, then I will wet your dome. There's no better poem. I crack the Rosetta Stone in the Dead Sea Scrolls. I part Red Sea's whole. My lead needs souls. In my head I see trolls. No doubt I rhyme best. I got a Teflon line vest. A whole human body is hard to digest.
Okay, thank you guys. Blessings. Yeah, welcome. Blessings, guys.
Hello. Yeah, I got kicked out.
Yeah, it's no worries. Yeah, it happens, especially a lot here. But yeah, you get censored and you get all sorts of stuff here. We also get people threatening us, all types of things. Fascinating.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, we get death threats. We get people with. We got people telling me the ISI told them not to watch my show. the Pakistani secret services. You got people say all sorts of stuff.
When did this happen?
Oh
I
man,
didn't hear about this.
oh yeah, yeah. We get threatened. We get death threats. We get porn bombs. You know that's actually fairly regular. You know that people come up and they do things to mass report the channel. You know, so there's that sort of thing because we keep an open format here. Because I'm not interested in creating a drama stream or creating pseudo intellectual debates. You know, for clout chasers and grifting. I mean, right? That these people are involved in. You know, we're only here to have detached and abstract commentary on current events, you know, that we won't be getting paid to do. And so, you know, that is it. You know, that's the only conditions that apply to us. Not an organization, just one single person. You know, I'm creating this show with a $20 microphone, StreamYards, and also a screen recorder. So it is what it is. I mean,
Mm-hmm. Well, you're providing a platform where people can discuss these things. But
yeah, because there's lots of people. I mean, we have a couple people. Bless you, madam. I hope you're okay. But yeah, we have a lot of you know, people out here, you know, that are, you know, that don't that are deplatformed elsewhere, but they have lots to offer in terms of intellectual critiques of issues that are going on. I think we sent one of them your way, Annapurna, right? Our
Oh
Hindu
yes,
friend.
yes.
So people like that are extremely capable of discussing certain issues, but they're obviously deplatformed, demonetized. So we keep a few of them around, for which is which we're blessed to find these people through holding a higher style of discussion, because we simply talk about primary sources, usually philosophy and a few other things, and and it's usually philosophy that's charged with commentary on either politics, theology, or technology, and then obviously we focus on technology and religion, science and spirituality, and sort of the barriers between those things. So it brings a lot in.
Yes, yes, and what you said about the dark triad and tetrad, and you were saying, you shouldn't call people names just because you don't like them, and
Right.
calling, Lenin dark triad, tetrad. I mean, it's like, I think we've all been accused of narcissism, and when I was younger, it was you'd be accused of being self-centered, and I guess before that we would just be accused of being selfish. But they have these sort of new words to make it seem even worse than it is. Of course, we're all capable of being thoughtless and selfish and self-regarding and conceited and maybe sometimes unprincipled. But to call it Machiavellianism, which is more sinister than just being sometimes a little unprincipled and psychopathy. I guess that's not really caring if the people we don't like get hurt. And sadism. I mean, the Germans have this term called Schadenfreude, don't they? So, I think the way they put it together is to demonize a person rather than being particularly helpful, really.
Yeah, starting with I think Machiavelli is being thrown under the bus with this very term, because Machiavelli would have protested to any labeling of his philosophy or ideology. He's simply looking at practical methods. So for him to assume that he's promoting some type of ideology or methodology abroad, would be antithetical to his reasoning, to the reasoning that Machiavelli himself employs. Right. So I think the term Machiavellianism is literally a stale, just nothing burger. Right. And, what is like Machiavelli is just describing systems of power. Right. So to reduce Machiavelli to Machiavellianism when he rejects every single form of idealism is sort of just, is psychopathy in itself. Right. And then psychopathy, just being put on there. What does that even mean? I mean, I don't know what it means. I don't think a general person knows what it means.
Well, it means psychopath, which means mass murderer or something like that. And
But I
then they
think
say, oh no, it doesn't mean that really. It means.
But if I'm not generally mistaken, sociopath is a precise medical terminology, but psychopath is not. And I could be wrong about that, but I believe it to be the case. I mean. But yeah, psychopath. I wonder if there's actually psychopath in DSM-5, right? So this seems very strange terminology to employ,
Well, I think a lot of these terms come with not having a religion, because basically if you don't have a religion, then it's like, well, anything is permitted as long as you get if you don't get caught, right? Yeah, you were saying about Machiavelli. Actually, he was trying to be helpful to the prince, right? He wrote a book called The Prince, and he's saying, try and keep order, because if you don't keep order, a lot of innocent people will suffer if crimes don't get punished. Blah blah blah. I mean, he wasn't just saying, "Oh, just be evil and unprincipled for the sake of it." Yeah, it wasn't anything like that at all. He's just saying, well, things like, well, if you're going to make enemies, make sure you are in a position to destroy them completely, or make sure that they can't hurt you. It's like kind of practical advice, and he wasn't being evil for the sake of being evil.
Yeah, here they've designated 3 different terms to deal with this. It says they subsequently introduced a diagnosis of antisocial personality disorder, ASPD, the dissocial personality disorder, DPD, respectively, stating that these diagnoses referred to and included what is referred to as psychopathy or sociopathy. So it's a terribly imprecise term. But yeah, sociopathy, I believe, is the medically precise term. So why they would then use this other very imprecise term, that's antiquated, for this triad system is actually rather striking to me. I mean, but then here they also say sadism. Now, now of course it's important to observe, as I was saying before, that the bottom half of this is different from the top half of this. Okay, meaning that the bottom half is going to be overrepresented, and it's going to be more probable that, the downward triangle is more, represented in the 2 parts, namely, the parts of narcissism and psychopathy are going to weigh heavy on the scale, and then, then Machiavellianism and sadism are going to be more rare aspects of this. So that's also what this is meant to show. But yeah, it's a rather interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they just try to make the person, really sinister. But in reality, we've all been accused of being mad and silly, and selfish, which these days is called narcissistic, and so yeah, they use these big words to demonize us, whoever they want to demonize, I guess.
Yeah, so he's saying that it's going to be 5% of the population that has these characteristics, and I guess they're going to tend to be, the more powerful people in the society. I don't know.
Well, I guess if they're really powerful, they get away with the, with their psychopathy,
Right,
their
right.
sadism, their Machiavellianism, and their narcissism. Yeah.
Right. So that seems to be what he's referring to here.
Yeah, I mean, sociopathy just means lacking in empathy, right? I think that's, and I think we've all been accused of that, being selfish and thoughtless and not caring about the feelings of others,
Yeah, I think it has something to do with some form of emotional numbness or something like that. But yeah, either internal or externalized. But yeah. Yeah, because they say you can't feel the pain of others, or you don't know when you've hurt somebody or something like that. Because they say that David Wood, he says he's a sociopath, and he says he hit his dad in the head with a hammer, or something like that, and that was that he didn't actually feel what he was doing. So this is the kind of idea or whatever. So
yeah, stay clear of somebody like that.
right. Yeah, probably a good idea. Yeah, not to make them public figures. Right? But yeah, I mean,
has dark tetrad cluster B traits to some significant degree.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so that was histrionic, narcissistic, antisocial, and psychopathic, right? That's the cluster B cluster.
So he's excluded Machiavellianism. So I wonder which one would be Machiavellianism. I guess histrionic, because he's mentioned psychopathic, he's mentioned narcissistic, he's mentioned antisocial. Okay, so antisocial I think would be Machiavellianism, because I think histrionic is sadism. So one of those
is what being a drama queen, I thought, but maybe I'm wrong. histrionic personality disorder is just somebody who's always,
Well, I think it would go with I think it would go with sadism because it's self-victimizing. So that would be the trait or whatever. I think they're looking. Then antisocial would be Machiavellianism because you're sort of think you're above people, I guess, or something like that. Or I think antisocial is usually it's a form of psychopathy where they see themselves as above others, or they are sort of megalomaniacal in some way.
And psychopathic, right? That's the cluster B cluster. Whether those are psychopathologies, like illnesses, that's a matter of dispute. There are certainly forms of severe social misbehavior, manipulative social misbehavior.
Yes.
And people who fall into those categories will use cries of victimization to parasitize.
Yes.
Right. So they're parasitizing on empathy. That's one hallmark. Right. They have disordered interpersonal relationships, often very intense. They're predatory, particularly the antisocial types. That's more straight, repetitive criminals. Very stable pattern of behavior.
Yeah.
So let's say 4 to 5%. It's probably increased because of the net. That would be my guess, because it's not well regulated on the net, because most of our evolved mechanisms for dealing with such people don't work. Especially, we could talk about anonymity, because I can understand why people defend it, but by the same token, it allows you to escape from your well-deserved reputation.
With Mother's Day just around the corner, I wanted to share an amazing organization that's making a real difference for mothers in need. Preborn. Their network of clinics provides love, support, and hope.
This is so confusing. This is actually part of the program. So this is that I felt like this would have a lot of commercials in it, but this commercial is part of the program. It's something about pregnant women. It's kind of odd. Ad here. I don't know. Well-deserved reputation with Mother's Day just around the corner. Share amazing organization. Preborn. Network of clinics to pregnant women. Oh man, this looks like it's worth looking into. Preborn. What kind of leftism are they promoting in this preborn program? I wonder.
Is it just a new word for antenatal?
Yeah, really. I assume it's that type of a project because they're introducing these women to medical programs before, while they're pregnant. I don't understand. Preborn. Very odd thing that they're promoting there.
Ago, by the way, you said that one of the features, you got in trouble for this, and you were right, of course, but you said one of the features of our moment was that there's male aggression and female aggression that express themselves differently.
Yeah.
And male aggression, I don't know if you use this terminology, but I think it's something to this effect, doesn't upload very well.
Yeah.
You can't punch somebody in the nose through the screen.
Yeah.
But female aggression, the social aggression, uploads very well. But what it turns out is
females are part of the mass conscience. So this is the problem, is that when you expose females to technology, they become part of a public conversation. So they shouldn't be allowed online. Obviously, they shouldn't be allowed into social spaces. The social spaces should be, time for men to address the problems in society, and procure value systems. Right. And, obviously women can have their sewing circles, right, or whatever. Right. But this type of thing that women are disproportionately part of the social dialogue because of the technology and because they're sitting at home and all these boomer grandmas are online. And they're curating these chats and these shows, and, because they have time and energy and resources, especially the white women. Right. So, these spaces that are curated by these white ladies,
this cluster B or dark tetrad manipulation uploads almost even better.
Yes.
You can have 50 accounts. You can, switch from one to the other. You can create entire false environments that your targets have to engage in.
It's particularly true because it's literally cost free.
Yeah.
Right. So you might imagine that any storehouse of value is likely to be parasitized to the degree that you can invade it for no cost.
Yeah, that's totally right.
Okay. So this is what I think happened to the universities, right? Is that they're whale carcasses, and they've been invaded by parasites. And the whale carcass idea is a very old one. It's a huge storehouse of value, right? So since World War II, the West was on a pretty productive trajectory, and we generated massive storehouses of value in many, many places. Those would be financial storehouses, but reputational storehouses that's even more germane. Like Harvard has both. It did have both, right?
Have both.
$53 billion plus a stellar reputation.
Yeah, the best brand in America.
Exactly. And
in the world.
Next to Disney.
Yeah, right.
Right, which is another storehouse of value that's been severely parasitized. Okay, so now, so that's two things. There's 5% of the population. Oh yes,
right.
The dark.
So you want the universities out of the hands of the government and into the hands of the corporations. What is that going to accomplish? It's still the same liberal programming, right? Like, I don't understand what that's going to fix. Oh, now he's actually mentioning Machiavellianism. He's saying dark tetrad types are narcissistic Machiavellian. Okay, so, I mean, this term is, I can't overstress the problem with this term Machiavellian. All right, this is the stupidest thing, to call somebody Machiavellian. Right, it's the dumbest thing. I mean, what would Machiavelli think of this? Right, see, this is what I'm saying. You're conflating idealism with Machiavellianism. That's the first problem in this term. It's, okay, we got the homie here. Blessings.
Yo, man, listen.
Yeah, this is garbage so far.
Yo, did you read my article I wrote on this?
No.
Yeah, I wrote an article actually about
on this exact talk. Oh man.
Yeah. On these two and kissing.
So we're able to play it too, right? Like the audio of it.
I mean, as long as it'll work on Substack for that way for you. I'm not 100% on that one. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because I noticed there's like a playable file there. Is that you reading it?
I mean, possibly. We can go with that, bro. Listen, I don't even. Hang on, man. Let me look. Double check my joint real quick. Propaganda.
You could straight up read it here if you want. I mean,
yeah. I read it. Yeah, I read it. Yeah. Well, listen, because I did two of them. I wasn't sure which ones I did. Yeah, like you can stay. Yeah, you can play it. I read them, and I break down.
Yeah, I'll play it. I'll play it at the end of the show here. Yeah, blessings.
Yeah. Like, yo, these two are like dumb as shit. Jordan Peterson is basically like he's upset that if you form like communities and you have like positive structures for like humans, you're not going to need him anymore. Right. And then James Lindsay's like, oh, well, like, I want you to be a part of science. You know what I'm saying? And like, be all like liberal and whatever. And if people go, yeah, listen, that shit's gay as hell too. You're not going to end up wanting to be around Lindsay. You know what I mean? And Lindsay 100% trying to get you back on the America rah-rah bandwagon. You know what I mean? When in reality, like, that's probably what we should be moving away from, is that America rah-rah bandwagon, because that nationalistic fervor has been used like forever to get like us to do shit that isn't really good for us. You know what I mean? Like, every time they're like, oh, you need to sacrifice for your country, for God and country, it's never something that's positive for you. You know what I mean? And that's kind of where this is at. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean,
bro, he do got a point. I got a few veteran friends who would agree with that.
Yeah, but I don't understand how they don't understand how they're promoting leftism by using a term like narcissistic Machiavellianism. You know what I mean? Right? Like what?
Yo, because they're leftist.
Right. It's like, do you not see yourself? I mean, it's kind of really strange here. It's a strange move.
Well, remember, like, yo, I put this at I think the end of the article, right? You have to remember that, like, these guys here, classical liberals are just basically libertarians with less pedophilia. That's basically what it is, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, but I don't know if you've seen this. Did you watch this entire thing?
Nah, man, listen, I would not. Bro, come on, home. Like, listen, if I wanted, you know what I'm saying, to, like, you know, harm myself, I have much.
That's what I'm doing. I'm actually gonna watch this entire thing. I'm gonna watch this entire thing.
Yo, did you see James Lindsay lose his mind with, like, the star, like, Saint Michael and, like, all of his crazy ass shit that he did?
No. What was it? What's this?
Bro, listen. Like, yo, hold up. I gotta find it. I gotta find it, Joan, real quick.
Did he cook himself recently with some other antics?
Yeah, I don't even know how to explain it, right? Like, I'll be real with you, because, like, it doesn't make any sense to me. You know what I mean? All right, hold up. All right, so, like, James Lindsay basically, like, he went on Twitter, and you know how, like, he breaks down, like, Marxism or whatever the fuck it is?
Right.
Like, from the left. Well, he went on Twitter and he started to do the same thing with the right. You know what I'm saying? And so, like, I had to show you. It's one of those, like, show don't tell type of things. I'm just gonna pull it up on my joint, bro. Like, yo, so you can see exactly what the fuck I'm talking about. Right. Hang on. Start cam, OBS, start virtual camera. There we go. Okay, so where's it at? There it is. All right, here. Look. Right. So, like, James Lindsay went full on, like, schizo rant, drawing shit, talking about, like, how, like, everybody who's trying to be like an ortho bro, or
yeah, I think I like this post here.
Or, like,
yeah, I think I remember this post coming on. They drew all this shit. Yeah. So what was this about? Yeah, this is
bro, I don't even know. All right, like, because, like, it's schizo shit, right? Basically, like, he's
so I
trying
see there's
to
a bug
claim
inside of a Jewish star there, or
yeah, no, I mean, I
like
think
a mosquito
that's
type of thing.
like
what
the
is it?
staff that, you know, like the Blue Cross and Blue Shield staff.
Oh, the staff of Asclepius.
We'll go with that, dog. We'll go with that. I don't know.
You're talking about the thing on the back of the ambulance?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. Represents medicine or whatever, right?
Yeah, that's the staff of Asclepius. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, yo, he went, like, James Lindsay sat here and he wrote down, like, all this shit. He said most Americans, even Catholics, don't know anything about Archangel Michael except in a very vague sense. I grew up Catholic. Michael was not a thing ever in any Catholic I know. So now Michael's idolatry will be a big thing for our side, and Demosophists will fill in the details of what it means most broadly, ignorant Americans. This is serious. The cult that controls the world on the left believes that a cult religion will certainly co-opt the right into a direction, a version of partial spiritual contamination. It's also covered over the fingerprints of counterintelligence operation. We should be very slow to trust. Right? Just straight schizo ranting, dog. We get to the, like, Lucifer and Zoroastrianism, like, everything.
Well, this is the thing, is that some people can get away with it. Like for example, Jason Reza Giorgiani. He's able to get away with it.
I don't know who he is.
Oh, man. You got to look him up. And tell me what you think. on Break the Rules podcast?
I might, but like the whole point is like James Lindsay, like full on schizo retard. Right? Like 100% just went full fucking schizo retard.
Yeah, but you know, this is the problem though. Everybody's a schizo, but nobody it's poison in the well by offering up this term because he's calling everybody the same thing. He just said schizo. So they're using schizo and everybody's using schizo. So everybody's pathologizing everybody. And I think that is that's the end of discourse. It's poison in the well. You know, it's a definition of poisoning the well, right?
Mm.
Yeah, because there's nowhere to go from there, right?
Yeah, I mean,
it's like either we all go to the mental hospital together or what, right?
Yeah, he's 100%, you know what I mean, like just off his rocker. You know what I mean? Like, listen, bro, hold up. Listen, here's what I said. Here's what I said, bro, about James Lindsay, okay? James Lindsay's an atheist. He's also the last of the atheists left. There used to be a group called the Skeptic Community on YouTube. They were really big back in 2018 and 2019 during the whole Gamergate thing. These guys were an introduction to the culture war for normies. The normies who are being introduced to the subject for the first time will be impressed with their polished production quality and feel like the new terms they were learning made them experts on these subjects. The viewers were made to feel like they were discovering some deep hermetic knowledge that they could share with people around the water cooler. James Lindsay made a documentary about how he wrote fake studies, published fake papers, and got them printed in academic journals. He used all the academic jargon of post-constructive, post-grad gender study majors with a minor in underwater lesbian basket weaving, interpretive dance while doing so. The right praised him for exposing the unscientific peer review process of academia. This ultimately led him to becoming a darling of libertarian college-educated white men. Here was a physicist basically trolling the entire system with scientific precision. The problem was that those 20-something libertarians soon started growing and getting married and having children. The libertine lifestyle seems great until you see your parents have a cancer scare or go with your mother to a chemo treatment and have to help her to the bathroom after. All of a sudden, you see that one day you may need family and a culture and a family and a culture that promotes such things. This is antithetical to the me ideology of libertarianism. You start thinking about how to promote people to care about each other, keep a community engaged, and have moral expectation of family members. You see a giant cross on the highway and realize, oh yeah, we got religion. So the young men become Catholic or Orthodox and start caring about people and nation and not the state. Guys like James Lindsay start feeling a cold streak running up their spines. He realizes, oh no, what if they stop caring about me and my ability to point out how the left is wrong? What if the people all of a sudden just want to be married and tell academia to fuck off because they had the numbers and I'm shut out because I'm an atheist? They scream, you woke rightist, you're all Satan. You're worshiping a false god. Hey, you get back here and worship this flag right now. The government and academia are the only way to be a real human. Your worth is only based on your pedigree degree from a higher education institution. Hey, this institution didn't give you permission to leave. Get back on the plantation, slave. Right? And that's basically James Lindsay in a fucking nutshell.
James Lindsay. Yeah, and also he's got another boy named Peter Boghossian. Yeah, thank you, Claire, for joining. I don't know if she fell out again or if she actually left, but yeah, thank you so much for joining. You know, greatly appreciate you being here. I mean, but yeah, you know what I mean? I'm not gonna watch it all today, but I'm eventually gonna watch it all. You know, and then I got another debate that's also painful on the woke right thing. You know, so we're gonna look at two different perspectives on this whole thing. But yeah, obviously, you know, I mentioned you in the beginning of this because you said the systems neatest trick applies to the right wing now.
Yep.
So yeah, definitely on that tip as well. So
yeah, but that's a mentality.
Yeah.
Joe, listen, I gotta go to work. I'll hop back in here in a little bit once I'm like in the truck and rolling.
Yeah, for sure. Back. Yeah, for sure.
Right. Peace, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be gone pretty soon, folks. So I mean, I'm only gonna watch like 2 more minutes of this right now, and then I'm gonna read some Nietzsche and look at some work by Julius Evola, and then I'll close this out. You know, but you know, I'm gonna begin reading Beyond Good and Evil on the show. So we'll read Beyond Good and Evil on this alternative channel here. right? Cyber Caliphate. Let me actually drop you guys a link here for Cyber Caliphate, right? Right, because this is happening on the machine lives, but it's actually happening on Cyber Caliphate. You know, one of the main channels. Yeah, so in case we get banned, we have this channel Cyber Caliphate. Right, please join over there on Cyber Caliphate, right? Because we may eventually get banned from this channel. Right? Okay, we got Office of Secular Quranism right here. Okay, please go ahead and subscribe to Claire from Secular Quranism. Right. Okay, she gave some expert commentary here earlier on the panel. Blessings. Right. And yeah, Creek Mary. Thank you for being here. Yeah, thanks for being here, Claire. Blessings. And yeah, let's take a look at a couple more minutes of this and then move it along here. You mean
dark tetrad types are narcissistic, Machiavellian.
Yeah.
So they use language only as a means to manipulate towards instrumental ends. There's no communicative intent.
Right.
It's all essentially status gaming. They're psychopathic, and that means they're predatory parasites. And then,
yeah, I can't believe somebody who studied Nietzsche is talking like this. I mean, you know, using Machiavellianism to describe psychopathy, right? You know,
and they had to top it all off with sadism. And I think that's what changed the dark triad to the dark tetrad. I think the reason for that is that if you have a dark triad orientation towards the world and the world turns against you, it makes you so angry because you're rejected and
yeah. Well, libertinism comes from Sabbateanism, right? And this whole idea of libertinism and Sabbateanism are closely linked with the idea of sadism, right? That comes from the prominent thinker Marquis de Sade during the French Revolution. Oh my God, am I getting kicked out again? Can everybody hear me, or can anybody hear me?
I hear you.
All right, I'm gonna come back in. Give me a second, folks. All right, there we go. Hopefully it'll start off. Whoops, that's the wrong window. Yeah, hopefully this will start off at the same spot that we left off here. When it opens.
Dark tetrad. I think the reason for that is that if you have a dark triad orientation towards the world and the world turns against you, it makes you so angry because you're rejected and unsuccessful that expresses itself in positive delight in the unnecessary suffering of others, right? So this is dark material.
Yeah.
Now, there's no reason to assume that the cluster B dark tetrad types would do anything other than gravitate towards storehouses of value. First of all, the parasite problem is a very deep problem biologically, right? It's so deep that some people think sex evolved to solve it. As you mix the genes, it's harder for parasites to move down the generations, right? So that's actually one of the canonical theories for the evolution of sex itself. Why would you take a 50% hit in terms of genetic transmission when you could just clone yourself? Well, the parasites can breed, multiply faster than you can. And so they have the upper edge in a lengthy battle. So you mix up the genes and anyways, so the parasite problem is a very old problem.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to add one more thing to that.
Yeah.
So imagine that a system of knowledge is a way of representing the world and navigating in it. Okay, so that would be like a scientific theory or an engineering theory, right? And so you might be able to assess that theory on the grounds of objective fact, say. Okay, but then imagine.
I think that is essentially a good place to leave it, because I think what he said is a actual interesting note, right? He's saying that weaker viruses spread throughout population or become normalized in a population because people mix their genes and sort of get rid of them that way. Right. So what they do is they sort of dilute the virus itself by a mixture of genes, right? By breeding with stronger people. But what happens to those stronger people is they get weighed down by the virus of the people that they're breeding with, right? So it's essentially his a thing of how liberalism gets stronger and stronger and stronger, right, throughout time as the woke mind virus, spreads. So I think that is a key idea, right? But yeah, let's move to Nietzsche here, and then we'll play a little bit of this Ride the Tiger by Avola, right? And and we'll figure out here where to go from here, right? But yeah, he says the prejudices of philosophers, the will to truth, which is to tempt us to many a hazardous enterprise, the famous truthfulness of which all philosophers have hitherto spoken with respect. What questions has this will to truth not laid before us? What strange, perplexing, questionable questions. It is already a long story, yet it seems as if it were hardly commenced. Is it any wonder if we at last grow distrustful, lose patience, turn impatiently away, that this Sphinx teaches us at last to ask questions ourselves? Who is it really that puts questions to us here? What really is this will to truth in us? In fact, we made a long halt at the question as to the origin of this will, until at last we came to an absolute standstill before a yet more fundamental question. We inquired about the value of this will. Granted that we want the truth. Why not rather untruth and uncertainty, even ignorance? The problem of the value of truth presented itself before us. Or was it we who presented ourselves with before the problem? Which of us is the Oedipus here? Which the Sphinx? It would seem to be a rendezvous of questions and notes of interrogation. And could it be believed that it at last seems to us as if the problem had never been propounded before? As if we're the first to discern it, get a sight of it, and risk raising it. For there is the risk of raising it. Perhaps there is no greater risk. How could anything originate out of its opposite? For example, truth out of error, or will to truth out of the will to deception, or the generous deed out of selfishness, or pure sun-bright vision of the wise man out of covetousness. Such genesis is impossible. Whoever dreams of it is a fool, nay, worse than a fool. Things of the highest value must have different origin or origin of their own. In this transitory, seductive, illusory, paltry world, in this turmoil of delusion and cupidity, they cannot have their source, but rather in the lap of being, with a capital B, he says. In transitory, in the concealed God, in the thing in itself, there must be the source and nowhere else. This mode of reasoning discloses the typical prejudice by which metaphysicians of all times must be recognized. This mode of valuation is the back of all their logical procedure. Through this belief, quote unquote, of theirs, they exert themselves for their knowledge, quote unquote. for something that is in the end solemnly Christian, quote unquote, the truth. The fundamental belief of metaphysicians is the belief in antithesis of values. I'll read that again. The fundamental belief of metaphysicians is the belief in antithesis of values. It never occurred, even to the wariest of them, to doubt here on the very threshold, where doubt, however, was most necessary. Though they had made a solemn vow, de omnibus dubitandum. I don't know what that means. De omnibus dubitandum. Let's look it up. A Latin term. De omnibus dubitandum. We're here reading Beyond Good and Evil by Nietzsche. De omnibus dubitandum est is a book written by... Wait, what? Oh, it means everything must be doubted. So it's the doubt itself, the thing that everything must be brought into question, the reevaluation of values. De omnibus dubitandum. Okay, kind of like contra hominum de homines, right? The war of all against all, right? In Hobbes. De omnibus dubitandum. Right? The seat of skepticism itself, right? It's Beyond Good and Evil by Friedrich Nietzsche. Anyways, for it may be doubted, firstly, whether antithesis exists at all, and secondly, whether the popular valuations and antithesis of value upon which metaphysicians have set their seal are not perhaps merely superficial estimates, merely provisional perspectives, besides being probably made from some corner, perhaps from below, frog perspectives, as it were, to borrow an expression current among painters, in spite of all the value which may belong to the true, the positive, the unselfish. It might be possible that a higher and more fundamental value of life generally should be assigned to pretense, to the will to delusion, to selfishness and cupidity. It might even be possible that what constitutes the value of those good and respected things consists precisely in their being insidiously related, knotted, and crocheted to these evil and apparently opposed things, perhaps even in being essentially identical with them, perhaps. But who wishes to concern himself with such dangerous perhapses? For that investigation must await the advent of a new order of philosophers, such as will have other tastes and inclinations, the reverse of those hitherto prevalent philosophers of the dangerous, perhaps, quote unquote, in every sense of the term. As to speak in all seriousness, I see such new philosophers beginning to appear. Section 3, having kept a sharp eye on philosophers, and having read between the lines long enough, I now say to myself that the greater part of conscious thinking must be counted among the instinctive functions. And it is so even in the case of philosophical thinking. One has here to learn anew, as one learned anew about hereditary and innateness. As little as the act of birth comes into consideration in the whole process and procedure of heredity, just as little is, quote unquote, being conscious opposed to the instinctive in any decisive sense. The greater part of the conscious thinking of a philosopher is secretly influenced by his instincts and forced into definite channels, and behind all logic and its seeming sovereignty of movement, there are valuations, or to speak more plainly, physiological demands for the maintenance of a definite mode of life. For example, that the certain is worth more than the uncertain, that illusion is less valuable than truth, Such valuations, in spite of their regulative importance for us, might notwithstanding be only superficial valuations, special kinds of nacery, such as may be necessary for the maintenance of beings, such as ourselves. Supposing in effect that man is not just the measure of all things. Okay, making man an end in himself. See, Nietzsche rejects that. Anyways, the falseness of an opinion is not for us objection of it. I mean objection to it. Perhaps that our new language sounds most strangely. The question is how far an opinion is life furthering, life preserving, species preserving, perhaps species rearing. And we are fundamentally inclined to maintain that the falsest opinions, to which synthetic judgments a priori belong, are the most indispensable to us. And without a recognition of logical functions, without a comparison of reality with the purely imagined world of the absolute and immutable, without a constant counterfeiting of the world by means of numbers, man could not live. That the renunciation of false opinions would be a renunciation of life, a negation to life. To recognize untruth as a condition of life, that is certainly to impugn the traditional ideas of value in a dangerous manner. And a philosophy which ventures to do so has thereby alone placed itself beyond good and evil. Okay, there's a little introduction, folks. We'll continue reading here in a minute. We'll play some music here. And we'll be back soon with some more Nietzsche and some Julius Evola. Right? This is this is now beginning to be the end of the show, if you guys are wondering. Right, and of course we'll be back with this at another time. Right, tomorrow we're doing a regular show. Wednesday we're doing a regular show. Thursday we'll see what's up on Thursday. Maybe we'll continue this on Thursday, right? Maybe not. We may continue it on Friday night. Right? So we'll see what happens, right? Indeed we will. But yeah.
Yo, try not to often speak on subject. Unusual suspect, revenge I must get. Vengeance is mine, which make me heartless. Department of Justice would love to bust us. Bang hard, get jacked by gang squad, so we keep it on the low, make us untouchable. Hard hitting when my man starts spitting. We raw dog, you kitten. Don't take orders, try harder. Cause I got friends that's down for murder. Roll deep, walking restaurant, pull you out your seat. Take you out back, crack back till task complete. Beat to death. Assassins disguised as waiters. Mad Child, Darth Vader in the Cape Crusader. Top that, Barracuda, Black Panther and Bobcat. Anger management and unlimited guns. Natural born killers are the primitive ones.
Cause the spots is hot. A lot of shots bust, but I can't get got. And niggas wanna pop, but forget me not. Yo, I bust 2 shots, so y'all can't stop falling members. Yo, duck down, I buck down, I don't give a fuck now. What's up now? The rock sound, I'm up in the club now. Touchdown, I bust down rocks with my rough style. Run around and fuck around, get lost in my fun house. Any member, I dismember. Remember, bright as fuck, yo, it be the gun expert. Your head trick, my network thick like double deckers. Enter surrender raps are like swollen members. Full band fenders, send bullets through contenders. Tempers red hot like Red Fox fucking with Esther. Deck the St. Jock, I Stallone like Sylvester. Funk molester, impress also semester. Aggressor, protector, successor, sub forever. Uncle Fester, cut back the Winchester. Recollect, ill connects, I might caress her. Send an ex that won't fuck a bitch forever like salt and pepper. Vanessa Del, hell whatever. Defender under D, cup the mad sex offender. Cause the spot is hot. A lot of shots bust, but I can't get got. And niggas wanna pop up, forgive me not. See, I bust 2 shots. Y'all can't stop, fuck dopey ass. Cause the spot is hot. A lot of shots bust, but I can't get got. And niggas wanna pop up, forgive me not. Yo, I bust 2 shots. See, y'all can't stop, fallen members.
If they could run, they would. There ain't no safe place to hide in this world. Change will change the term hurt. First in line to decline. Hellfire set to burn. Red alert. 9s at work. Less lives on the earth. Unless we stress knives and crooks. Universe. 1 in the hearse from 2 in the heart. You and your crew got too much to talk. It's a curse, a plague, an urgent thing, an ancient slang that's not only spoken gangs. Human nature. Doomed in danger. Ropes and hangers. West Side Stranglers. Van to Los Angeles. You got your hands full of savages now. Anchors is down and you still getting thrown around. Hard ocean. Hearts and chests are blown open. To be smoking sunrise, go home broken. No survivors, walking bombs with no timers. Drunk out my mind on homicide cider. A note to my girl, I promised I'd write her. Tonight's my night, the bite of the black vice.
Cause the spot is hot. A lot of shots bust, but I can't get got. And niggas wanna pop up, forgive me not. Yo, I bust 2 shots. See, y'all can't stop, fallen members. Cause the spot is hot. A lot of shots bust, but I can't get got. And niggas wanna pop up, forgive me not. See, I bust 2 shots. Y'all can't stop, fuck dopey ass.
Ain't you supposed to be hauling water to your thirsty fellow soldiers instead of hanging out with this dubious motherfucker, man?
Threat hunting is proactive. It goes on the offense. It doesn't wait for alerts or red flags. Instead, threat hunting seeks out cyber threats.
Most defense in the cyber world focuses on the after impact. Threat hunting flips that on its head. Threat hunting takes an idea and says, where do I believe that someone will try to attack me?
His chronicler who alone can tell me of this saga. Let me tell you of the days of my adventure.
It's the one-man army, general subliminal, flying through the sky, ready for war with syllables. Literary, military, top secret mission, you ain't seen nothing yet. It's like a stealth jet. My mental plane take flight, I airstrike the mic. The mystery pilot in the cockpit all night. See how I keep the shows live? I never lost a dog fight. See how my enemies knows that I'm just...
The time when the oceans drank Atlantis and the rise of the sons of Arius. There was an age uncreated.
Comes equipped for warfare, beware.
It is I, his chronicler, who alone can tell thee of this saga. Let me tell you of the days of my adventure.
It's the one-man army, general subliminal, flying through the sky, ready for war with syllables. Literary, military, top secret mission, you ain't seen nothing yet. It's like a stealth jet. My mental plane take flight, I airstrike the mic. The mystery pilot in the cockpit all night. See how I keep the shows live? I never lost a dog fight. See how my enemies nose dive? The name of my plane is the Pitbull Terrier. Keep my targets locked in, the more the merrier. Over your head when I break the sound barrier. So fly, my voice need an aircraft carrier. Travel airways, every track is a runway. Keep it jam packed like church on Easter Sunday. Rappers thinking they shall overcome one day. They must be dreaming, and I'm lyrical James Earl Ray. It's the one-man army.
You can put your whole army against my team. You can put your whole army against my team. I'm on a mission that they can say is impossible. I'm on a mission that they can say is impossible.
It's the one-man army. general subliminal. March across land, ready for war with syllables. Literary, military, top secret mission, you ain't seen nothing yet. I roll up on your set with speed, moving like a German blitzkrieg. MCs be like Chuck Norris coming to get these rhymes. I got what they missing, an action. Stand at attention, military fashion, and listen to the rapper Rambo, the mic commando. Fully equipped, I write rhymes for extra ammo. Too much to handle, you had a nerve to try to grab the mic. That's like her trying to fight hacker. I'm too marvelous when I'm dropping this. Watch the mic, turn it to a nuclear test site. MCs better heed the words of Tina, cause we don't need another hero. Shima, check it out, it's the one-man army.
You can put your own army against my seniors. Victories you can put your own army against my seniors. It's impossible. Great pride. Where the
one-man army
is impossible.
Deepest check it out, it's the one-man army. General subliminal, dive into the water, ready for war with syllables. Literary, military, top secret mission, you ain't seen nothing yet. How deep can I get? 6,000 leagues beneath them sea level. A submarine hero with torpedo silos. My strategies turn MCs into POWs. I love to battle with other rappers and sink their battleships. I send them up the creek and they lifeboats, paddlers. Saltwater Navy SEAL strategists, dive into your brainwaves with the backstroke, fabulous. Ain't interested if it's shark infested. Sold our equipment is a stupid investment. You can't see my style and I've shown this too many times. I've been in more missions than the homeless. Always on point like a compass. 360 degree, all around MC. It's the one-man army.
I'm on a mission that niggas say is impossible. I'm on a mission that niggas say is impossible.
The same.
It's the one-man army.
Only that the crowd would be there to greet him with howls of lust and fury.
Army, general subliminal, flying through the sky, ready for war with syllables. One-man army, general subliminal, march across land, ready for war with syllables. One-man army, general subliminal, dive into the water, ready for war with syllables. Literary, military, top secret mission, you ain't seen nothing yet. I roll up on your set with speed, moving like a German blitzkrieg. One-man army in the place to be, whether flying through the sky, on the land or sea. Yo, it's the one-man army on a mission. Yo, it's the one-man army on a mission. Yo, it's the one-man army on a mission. Yeah, specialized in warfares of all kind. Yeah. It's the one-man army, general subliminal. One-man army, general subliminal. One-man army.
Yeah, welcome back to the Machine Lies. We're here reading Beyond Good and Evil by Friedrich Nietzsche. He goes on to say,
that which causes philosophers to be regarded half distrustingly and half mockingly is not the oft-repeated discovery how innocent they are, how often easily they make mistakes and lose their way, in short, how childish and childlike they are, but that there is not enough honest dealing with them, whereas all raise a loud and virtuous outcry when the problem of truthfulness is even hinted at in the remotest manner. They all pose as though their real opinions had been discovered and attained through the self-evolving of a cold, pure, divinely indifferent dialectic. In contrast to all sorts of mystics who fairer and foolisher talk of inspiration, quote unquote. Whereas in fact a prejudiced proposition, idea, or suggestion, quote unquote, which is generally their heart's desire, abstracted and refined, is defended by them with arguments sought out after the event. Let me read that again. Prejudice, proposition, idea, or suggestion, which is generally their heart's desire, abstracted and refined, is defended by them with arguments sought out after the event. They are all advocates who do not wish to be regarded as such, generally astute defenders, also of their prejudices, which they dub truths, quote unquote, and very far from having the conscience which bravely admits this to itself very far from having the good taste of the courage which goes so far as to let this be understood, perhaps to warn friend or foe or in cheerful confidence and self-ridicule, the spectacle or the turtuffery of old Kant, equally stiff and decent, with which he entices us into the dialectic by ways that lead more correctly mislead to his categorical imperative, quote unquote, makes us fastidious one smile. We who find no small amusement in spying out the subtle tricks of old moralists and ethical preachers, or still more so the hocus pocus in mathematical form, by means of which Spinoza has, as it were, clad in philosophy in mail and mask, in fact, his love of his wisdom, to translate the term fairly and squarely, in order thereby to strike terror at once into the heart of the assailant who should dare to cast a glance on which invincible maiden, the Pallas Athena. How much of personal timidity and vulnerability does this masquerade of a sickly recluse betray? It has gradually become clear to me what every great philosophy up till now has consisted of, namely the confession of its originator and a species of involuntary and unconscious autobiography. And moreover, that the moral or immoral purpose in every philosophy has constituted the true viral germ, out of which as the entire plant has always grown. Indeed, to understand how the abstrusest, metaphysical assertions of a philosopher have been arrived at, it is always well and wise to ask oneself, what morality do they or does he aim at? Accordingly, I do not believe that an impulse to knowledge, quote unquote, is a father of philosophy, but that another impulse, here as elsewhere, has only made use of knowledge and mistaken knowledge as an instrument. But whoever considers the fundamental impulsing of man with a view to determining how far they may have been here acted as inspiring genii or demons and kobolds, will find that they have all practiced philosophy at one time or another, and that each one of them would have been only too glad to look upon oneself as the ultimate end of existence and the legitimate lord over all the other impulses, for every impulse is imperious, and as such attempts to philosophize. To be sure, in the case of scholars, in the case of really scientific men, it may be otherwise better, quote unquote, if you will. There may really be such a thing as an impulse to knowledge, some kind of small independent clockwork, which well wound up works away industriously to that end, without the rest of the scholarly impulses making any material part therein. The actual quote unquote interests of the scholar, therefore, are generally in quite another direction, in the in the family, perhaps, or in money making, or in politics. It is in fact almost indifferent at what point of research has little machine his little machine is placed. And whether the hopeful young worker becomes a good philologist, a mushroom specialist, or a chemist, he is not characterized by becoming this or that. In the philosopher, on the contrary, there is absolutely nothing impersonal. And above all, his morality furnishes decided and decisive testimony as who he is. That is to say, in what order the deepest impulses of his nature stand to each other. How malicious philosophers can be. I know of nothing more stinging than the joke Epicurus took the liberty of making on Plato and the Platonist. He called them Dionysiacal. Dionysiacalates. Damn, that's a complex word. One that I should start using. Dionysiacalates and Mephistophelians. Side note. In its original sense and on the face of it, the word signifies flatterers of Dionysus. Flatterers of Dionysus. Consequently, tyrants, accessories, and lickspittles. Besides this, however, it is much as to say they are all actors. There's nothing genuine about them. Dionysiacalax was a popular name for an actor, and the latter is really the malignant reproach that Epicurus cast upon Plato. He was annoyed by the grandiose manner, the mise en scene style of which Plato and his teacher of Samos, who sat concealed in his little garden at Athens and wrote 300 books, perhaps out of the rage and ambitious envy of Plato, who knows? Greece took 100 years to find out who the garden god Epicurus really was. Did she ever find out? Okay. See, it's putting Epicurus above the metaphysicians. There is a point in which philosophy, at which the conviction of philosopher appears at the scene, or to put it in the words of ancient mystery, adventavit asinus pulcher et fortissimus. I'll have to look that up. Stand by. Okay, here it is. Adventavit asinus pulcher et feastavit is a medieval Christian feast observed on 14th January, celebrating the flight into Egypt. And it's also called Feast of the Ass. The Feast of the Ass. Well, that doesn't sound right. But yeah, I'm not making that up. It's actually what they call it, right? Or in the medieval term, Feast of Fools. As a byproduct of the Feast of Fools. Festival of Fools was a feast day on January 1st, celebrated by the clergy of Europe during the Middle Ages. Huh. So I guess this is where they got New Year's festival from? Very weird. Anyways. So adventavit asinus pulcher et fortissimus. The Feast of the Ass. Celebration, right? You desire to live according to nature, quote unquote. Okay, come on, get your mind out of the gutter, folks. Okay, you desire to live according to nature. Of course, Epicurus is rolling over in his grave, huh? But yeah. You desire to live according to nature. We're continuing on, section 9. Oh, you noble Stoics, what a fraud of words. Imagine to yourself a being like nature, boundless, extravagant, boundlessly indifferent, without purpose or consideration, without pity or justice, at once fruitful and barren and uncertain. Imagine to yourselves indifference as a power. How could you live in accordance with such indifference? To live is not that just endeavoring to be otherwise than this nature? To live is not that just endeavoring to be otherwise to this nature? Is not living, valuing, preferring, being unjust, being limited, endeavoring to be different? And granted that your imperative, quote unquote, living according to nature means actually the same as living according to life, quote unquote, how could you do differently? What should you make a principle out of what you yourselves are and must be? In reality, however, it is quite otherwise with you. While you pretend to read with rapture the canon of your law and nature, you want something quite the contrary. You extraordinary stage players and self-deluders. In your pride, you wish to dictate your morals and ideals to nature herself, and to incorporate them therein. You insist that it shall be nature according to the Stoa, and would like everything to be made after your own image as a vast eternal glorification and generalism of Stoicism. With all your love for truth, you have forced yourself so long, so persistently, and with such hypnotic rigidity to see nature falsely. That is to say, stoically. That you are no longer able to see it otherwise, and to crown all, some unfathomable superciliousness gives you the bedlamite hope that because you are able to tyrannize over yourself, Stoicism is self-tyranny. Nature will also allow herself to be tyrannized over. Is not the Stoic part of nature? For this is an old and everlasting story. What happened in old times with the Stoics still happens today. As soon as ever a philosophy begins to believe in itself, it always creates the world in its own image. It cannot do otherwise. Philosophy is this tyrannical impulse itself. Philosophy is this tyrannical impulse itself. The most spiritual will to power, the will to, quote unquote, creation of the world, the will to causa prima. Okay, now I'm going to read one more, and then we're going to continue next time. The eagerness and subtlety, I should even say craftiness, with the problem of the real and apparent world. We're on section 10. Is dealt with at present throughout Europe, furnishes food for thought and attention, and he who hears only a quote unquote will to truth in the background and nothing else cannot certainly boast of the sharpest ears in the rare and isolated cases. It may really have happened that such a will to truth, a certain extravagant and adventurous pluck, a metaphysician's ambition of the forlorn hope has participated therein, and which in the end always prefers a handful of certainty, quote unquote, to a whole cartload of beautiful possibilities. There may even be puritanical fanatics of conscience who prefer to put their trust in a sure nothing rather than in an uncertain something. But that is nihilism, and the sign of despairing, morally wearied soul, notwithstanding the courageous bearing such a virtue may display. It seems, however, to be otherwise, with stronger and livelier thinkers who are still eager for life, in that they side against appearance and speak superciliously of perspective, quote unquote, in that they rank the credibility of their own bodies about as low as the credibility of the ocular evidence that, quote, the earth stands still, unquote, and still apparently allowing with complacency their securest possession to escape. For what does one at present believe in more firmly than one's body? Who knows if they are not really trying to win back something which was formerly and even secure possession, something of an old domain of faith of former times? Perhaps the immortal soul, perhaps the old God, quote unquote. In short, ideas by which they could live better, that is to say, more vigorously and more joyously than by quote unquote modern ideas. There's distrust of these modern ideas in this mode of looking at things, a disbelief in all that has been constructed yesterday and today. There's perhaps some slight admixture of satiety and scorn, which can no longer endure the bric-a-brac of ideas in the most varied origin, such as so-called positivism at present throws on the market a disgust of the more refined taste. And there is nothing either new or true except this motleynesss. Therein, it seems to me, of the present day, their instinct which repels them from modern reality is unrefuted. What do their retrograde bypaths concern us? The main thing about them is not that they wish to go back, but that they wish to get away therefrom. A little more strength, swing, courage, and artistic power, and they would be off and not back. Okay. We'll read more of this later. But yeah, as we see, he rejected Hegel, he rejected Kant, he rejected Spinoza, he rejected philosophical categorizations, philosophical systems. And yeah, he deeply rejected Stoicism. He's going with Epicurus. Anyways, we appreciate you guys for being here. Thank you for joining. Oh wait, hold on. I actually had another thing. I had Julius Evola too. Hold on, let me play that. Play 10 minutes of that before I forget. Sorry about that, guys. I feel they're probably wondering, I thought he was going to go on to Julius Evola. Or maybe nobody's paying attention. Who knows? Julius Evola. I think what he says here is pretty interesting. And I appreciate everybody for joining. Neurojack, Brown's Boy, Televised Apocalypse, Claire from Office of Secular Quranism. Okay, all you guys, I greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Ride the Tiger by Julius Evola.
Oh yeah, also Pinoid. You know, who could forget? Blessings.
Translated by Jocelyn Godwin and Constance Fontana. Narrated by an artificial intelligence based on the voice of Orson Welles. Produced by Parker Banks. Part 1. Orientations. Chapter 1. The Modern World and Traditional Man. This book sets out to study some of the ways in which the present age appears essentially as an age of dissolution. At the same time, it addresses the question of what kind of conduct and what form of existence are appropriate under the circumstances for a particular human type. This restriction must be kept in mind. What I am about to say does not concern the ordinary man of our day. On the contrary, I have in mind the man who finds himself involved in today's world, even at its most problematic and paroxysmal points. Yet he does not belong inwardly to such a world, nor will he give in to it. He feels himself, in essence, as belonging to a different race from that of the overwhelming majority of his contemporaries. The natural place for such a man, the land in which he would not be a stranger, is the world of tradition. I use the word tradition in a special sense, which I have defined elsewhere. It differs from the common usage, but is close to the meaning given to it by René Guénon in his analysis of the crisis of the modern world. In this particular meaning, a civilization or a society is traditional when it is ruled by principles that transcend what is merely human and individual, and when all its sectors are formed and ordered from above and directed to what is above. Beyond the variety of historical forms, there has existed an essentially identical and constant world of tradition. I've sought elsewhere to define its values and main categories, which are the basis for any civilization, society, or ordering of existence that calls itself normal in a higher sense, and is endowed with real significance. Everything that has come to predominate in the modern world is the exact antithesis of any traditional type of civilization. Moreover, the circumstances make it increasingly unlikely that anyone, starting from the values of tradition, even assuming that one could still identify and adopt them, could take actions or reactions of a certain efficacy that would provoke any real change in the current state of affairs. After the last worldwide upheavals, there seems to be no starting point either for nations or for the vast majority of individuals, nothing in the institutions and general state of society, nor in the predominant ideas, interests, and energies of this epoch. Nevertheless, a few men exist who are, so to speak, still on their feet among the ruins and the dissolution, and who belong more or less consciously to that other world. A little group seems willing to fight on, even in lost positions. So long as it does not yield, does not compromise itself by giving in to the seductions that would condition any success it might have, its testimony is valid. For others, it is a matter of completely isolating themselves, which demands an inner character as well as privileged material conditions, which grow scarcer day by day. All the same, this is the second possible solution. I would add that there are a very few in the intellectual field who can still affirm traditional values beyond any immediate goal, so as to perform a holding action. This is certainly useful to prevent current reality from shutting off every horizon, not only materially, but also ideally, and stifling any measures different from its own. Thanks to them, distances may be maintained, other possible dimensions, other meanings of life, indicated to those able to detach themselves from looking only to the here and now. But this does not resolve the practical, personal problem, apart from the case of the man who is blessed with the opportunity for material isolation, of those who cannot or will not burn their bridges with current life, and who must therefore decide how to conduct their existence, even on the level of the most elementary reactions and human relations. This is precisely the type of man that the present book has in mind. To him applies the saying of a great precursor, "The desert encroaches. Woe to him whose desert is within." He can in truth find no further support from without. There no longer exist the organizations and institutions that, in a traditional civilization and society, would have allowed him to realize himself wholly, to order his own existence in a clear and unambiguous way, and to defend and apply creatively in his own environment the principal values that he recognizes within himself. Thus, there is no question of suggesting to him lines of action that, adequate and normative in any regular traditional civilization, can no longer be so in an abnormal one. In an environment that is utterly different socially, psychically, intellectually, and materially, in a climate of general dissolution, in a system ruled by scarcely restrained disorder, in any way lacking any legitimacy from above. Thence come the specific problems that I intend to treat here. There is an important point to clarify at the outset regarding the attitude to be taken towards survivals. Even now, especially in Western Europe, there are habits, institutions, and customs from the world of yesterday, that is, from the bourgeois world, that have a certain persistence. In fact, when crisis is mentioned today, what is meant is precisely the bourgeois world. It is the basis of bourgeois civilization and society that suffer these crises and are struck by dissolution. This is not what I call the world of tradition. Socially, politically, and culturally, what is crashing down is the system that took shape after the revolution of the Third Estate and the First Industrial Revolution. Even though there were often mixed up in it some remnants of a more ancient order, drained of their original vitality. What kind of relationship can the human type whom I intend to treat here have with such a world? This question is essential. On it depend both the meaning to be attributed to the phenomena of crisis and dissolution that are ever more apparent today, and the attitude to be assumed in the face of them, and toward whatever they have not yet undermined and destroyed. The answer to this question can only be negative. The human type I have in mind has nothing to do with the bourgeois world. He must consider everything bourgeois as being recent and anti-traditional, born from processes that in themselves are negative and subversive. In many cases, one can see in the present critical phenomena a kind of nemesis or rebound effect. Although I cannot go into details here, it is the very forces that, in their time, were set to work against the previous, traditional European civilization that have rebounded against those who summoned them, sapping them in their turn, and carrying to a further degree the general process of disintegration. This appears very clearly, for example, in the socioeconomic field, through the obvious relationship between the bourgeois revolution of the Third Estate and the successive socialist and Marxist movements, through democracy and liberalism on the one hand and socialism on the other. The first revolution simply prepared the way for the second, whereupon the latter, having let the bourgeoisie perform that function, aimed solely at eradicating them. In view of this, there is one solution to be eliminated right away. The solution of those who want to rely on what is left of the bourgeois world, defending and using it as a bastion against the more extreme currents of dissolution and subversion, even if they have tried to reanimate or reinforce these remnants with some higher and more traditional values. In the first place, considering the general situation that becomes clearer every day, since those crucial events that are the two world wars and their repercussions, to adopt such an orientation signifies self-deception as to the existence of material possibilities. The transformations that have already taken place go too deep to be reversible. The energies that have been liberated, or which are in the course of liberation, are not such as can be reconfined within the structures of yesterday's world. The very fact that attempts at reaction have referred to those structures alone, which are void of any superior legitimacy, has made the subversive forces all the more vigorous and aggressive. In the second place, such a path would lead to a compromise that would be inadmissible as an ideal and perilous as a tactic. As I have said, the traditional values in the sense that I understand them are not bourgeois values, but the very antithesis of them. Thus, to recognize any validity in those survivals, to associate them in any way with traditional values, and to validate them with the latter with the intentions already described, would be either to demonstrate a feeble grasp of the traditional values themselves, or else to diminish them and drag them down to a deplorable and risky form of compromise. I say risky, because however one attaches the traditional ideas to the residual forms of bourgeois civilization, one exposes them to the attack, in some respects inevitable, legitimate, and necessary, currently mounted against that civilization. One is therefore obliged to turn to the opposite solution, even if things thereby become still more difficult, and one runs into another type of risk. It is good to sever every link with all that which is destined sooner or later to collapse. The problem will then be to maintain one's essential direction without leaning on any given or transmitted form, including forms that are authentically traditional but belong to past history. In this respect, continuity can only be maintained on an essential plane, so to speak, as an inner orientation of being, beside the greatest possible external liberty. As we shall soon see, the support that the tradition stands for to sever every link with all that which is destined sooner or later to residual forms of bourgeois civilization. One exposes them to the attack, in some respects inevitable, legitimate, and necessary, currently mounted against that civilization. One is therefore obliged to turn to the opposite solution, even if things thereby become still more difficult, and one runs into another type of risk. It is good to sever every link with all that which is destined
This is
sooner
the
or
main
later
part.
to collapse. The problem will then be to maintain one's essential direction without leaning on any given or transmitted form, including forms that are authentically traditional but belong to past history. In this respect, continuity can only be maintained on an essential plane, so to speak, as an inner orientation of being, beside the greatest possible external liberty. As we shall soon see, the support that the tradition can continue to give does not refer to positive structures, regular and recognized by some civilization already formed by it, but rather to that doctrine that contains its principles only in their superior pre-formal state, anterior to the particular historical formulations, a state that in the past had no pertinence to the masses, but had the character of an esoteric doctrine. For the rest, given the impossibility of acting positively in the sense of a real and general return to the normal system, and given the impossibility, within the climate of modern society, culture, and customs, of molding one's whole existence in an organic and unitary manner, it remains to be seen on what terms one can accept situations of utter dissolution without being inwardly touched by them. What in the current phase, which is in the last analysis a transitional one, can be chosen, separated from the rest, and accepted as a free form of behavior that is not outwardly anachronistic? Can one thus measure oneself against what is most advanced in contemporary thought and lifestyle, while remaining inwardly determined and governed by a completely different spirit? The advice, "Don't go to the place of defense, but to the place of attack," might be adopted by the group of differentiated men, late children of the tradition, who are in question here. That is to say, it might be better to contribute to the fall of that which is already wavering and belongs to yesterday's world than to try to prop it up and prolong its existence artificially. It is a possible tactic, and useful to prevent the final crisis from being the work of the opposition, whose initiative one would then have to suffer. The risks of such a course of action are more than obvious. There is no saying who will have the last word. But in the present epoch, there is nothing that is not risky. This is perhaps the one advantage that it offers to those who are still on their feet. The basic ideas to be drawn from what has been said so far can be summarized as follows. The significance of the crises and the dissolutions that so many people deplore today should be stated, indicating the real and direct object of the destructive processes: bourgeois civilization and society. But measured against traditional values, these latter were already the first negation of a world anterior and superior to them. Consequently, the crisis of the modern world could represent in Hegel's terms a negation of a negation, so as to signify a phenomenon that in its own way is positive. This double negation might end in nothingness, in the nothingness that erupts in multiple forms of chaos, dispersion, rebellion, and protest that characterize many tendencies of recent generations, or in that other nothingness that is scarcely hidden behind the organized system of material civilization. Alternatively, for the men in question here, it might create a new free space that could eventually become the premise for a future formative action. Chapter 2, The End of a Cycle. Ride the Tiger.
Okay, folks. We'll pick it up there next time. And, yeah. Thank you for joining us here on The Machine Lives, where we talk about the lives of the machine on the machine that lies. And I hope you guys have clarity to see through the lies, right? Blessings. We'll be back tomorrow night. This show will be on the alternative channel, Cyber Caliphate, after tomorrow, right? So if you want to view it, go view it there, right? And help us grow. Blessings.
A head full of fire and a belly full of hunger pain. Uncontained rage takes hold till I'm numb again. Clear the air like summer rain. It's just another day seen through the eye of the hurricane. Run away, train of thought, muscle, knuckle say. Love and hate, puffing shake straight till I suffocate. B-boy, bunning J's till my brain's buzzing. Ain't nothing changed. Decorate grey skies with colour spray paint. Tornadoes, fallen angel with a horned halo. Moonwalk on a rainbow, multiverse space ghost writer. Spit a day glow, one line of the tongue tied. Long timer, invisible ink specialist. I think devilish, sipping on the alcoholic beverage. rich, living with benefit cheats and no hopers. Deadbeats who sleep on their sofas, socialite soldiers, glued to the Motorola, worldwide like Coca-Cola. We network, exert energy, their head not expert. Trench foot putting in legwork, the wordsmith, still lifted off the first spliff. I levitate in space, let the earth drift. It's sickening, instinct without discipline. Living in a world where everybody hears but nobody's listening. It's like Mission Impossible, trying to hopscotch every obstacle. Death's never optional, it's the epilogue to the first chronicle. The black comic doing.
Low up on my jacks, phone roll like a wristband. Contents under pressure. Carry chopper, won't argue with a
Soldiers hold the coast there like they never been scared, but live life like they know their time's precious and scarce. Beef could be hell on earth, better settle it there. And if our sins are forgiven, heaven better prepare. I'll bring a breath of fresh air, bless polluted lungs. Bunged up from the years, bunning zoots a skunk. A lounge in blues and clubs with abusive bugs. Useless drunks, junkies abusing drugs, and young bloods with the loosest tongue. It's too much. Old cats act up like they're losing touch. They get past, some are truly stunned. Another rabbit in their headlights, far too confused to run. I stay balanced like planets with the moon and sun. I need shoes on my feet and some food to munch. If you relate to that statement, salute me once. One love, one hope for the youth till the future comes. It comes now. I'm drunk and run down, sun up to sundown. Cause life is bugged out, some doubt us, but couldn't survive without us. Parasites surround us like close encounters of the third kind. Cyclops with a third eye, deep in my trees like a termite. Forgot the herb till it burns bright. Burn rubber on the turnpike, pray stays locked in my searchlight. Word lies. The truth is now outside. And all you snotty nose boys, I wanna be easy. Yes, yes. Barking at my front door, don't know what happened now. Yeah, yeah, brain tax on the board, no lies.
Dobro. Rolling in my resonator guitar. Hey, what's going on, fine, young, beautiful people of the universe? This is Idea.
2 steps ahead of myself, following you blindly. Set my faith on fire, but the real arson was bad timing. Walking through walls never seemed so uninteresting. You make magic mundane when you put the suicide in sexy. IV upon request, I'm finally walking on my own. Mama was a coma, Papa was a rolling kidney stone. Send me home with enough thread to keep my wounds closed. Here lies the truth, was tattooed on the tombstone. The wounds torn, leaking worms out of its newborn scorn. Your perfume performs plastic poetry on my human form. Warm bacteria glowing in the dark, flash cooks the psyche. All Mikey ever wanted was all of her heart. I'll go for a short walk in the long run. When the spores spread to the lungs, it's all nails through the tongue. Fail to accept it all comes to pass. Fight me slow, fuck me fast. You're still my friend, take off the mask. When I heard I've got this perfect little medicine, bright enough to blind the sun, it makes my itches interesting. I'm a slave, you're a story, but your bravery is boring. Lick your lips, point them at my heart and cut it open for me.
Is that good?
it would have a better backstage. The director keeps pressuring me to act my age. Maybe she's right. If I could squeeze a bit of life out of this empty page in the book of love, maybe I'll push and shove my way through this rainy day. Changes in the brain made the chains decay. My prescription angel, come and take my pain away. Play your guitar, try to sing out my cough. Found a treasure chest of pleasure. Excess marks the spot. Screw in the screws tighter. Clip the loose wires. I was truly inspired till my muse told me she's too tired. I had it coming, pulled the label, didn't read the warning. Running can be habit forming. When I heard I've got this perfect little medicine, bright enough to blind the sun and makes my itches interesting. I'm a slave, you're a story, but your bravery is boring. Lick your lips, point them at my heart and cut it open for me. When I heard I got this perfect little medicine, bright enough to blind the sun and makes my itches interesting. I'm a slave, you're a story, but your bravery is boring. Lick your lips.
And one more.
When I heard I got this perfect little medicine, bright enough to blind the sun and makes my itches interesting. I'm a slave, you're a story, but your bravery is boring. Lick your lips, point them at my heart and cut it open for me. When I heard I've got this perfect little medicine, bright enough to blind the sun and makes my itches interesting. I'm a slave, you're a story, but your bravery is boring. Lick your lips, point them at my heart and rip it open for me.
I'm really bad at that kind of stuff. Should I do a couple more or something? Totally. Totally get wicked on this rap. Hey, what's going on? This is ID.